Welcome to section 3.3. This is the 25th session of the CISSP exam prep series. In this session, we'll cover the heart of continuity work, the business impact analysis. We'll answer several questions. What is a business impact analysis? And how do quantitative and qualitative views differ? What are its 5 stages? How do you set priorities and the timing metrics that guide recovery? How do you identify risks and judge their likelihood? How do you measure impact in dollars? And how do you turn all of it into a priority list? Why does this matter beyond the exam? Because you cannot protect everything at once, and pretending otherwise wastes the budget you have. Picture a subscription streaming service deciding where to spend its limited resilience funds. The billing pipeline that collects revenue matters far more than the internal wiki. A business impact analysis is how you prove that, with evidence instead of gut feeling. As a security professional, this is the work that turns a wish list into a defensible plan. So what is a business impact analysis? And how do the two views differ? It is the study that identifies which processes are critical to your survival, what threatens them, how likely those threats are, and what impact they would cause. Its results give you both numerical and judgment-based measures to prioritize where continuity resources go. 2 lenses run throughout. A quantitative assessment uses numbers and formulas, usually expressing options as dollar values. A qualitative assessment weighs the things numbers miss, like reputation, customer confidence, and workforce morale, sorting them into bands like high, medium, and low. Both matter, and people naturally favor one, so you balance both temperaments on the team. This mirrors ordinary risk assessment, with one twist. Risk work centers on individual assets, while this work centers on whole business processes. Think of it like triaging patients in an emergency room. Some decisions ride on hard vital signs, and others on a nurse's trained judgment. You need both to treat the room well. What are the 5 stages of a business impact analysis? The work unfolds in a clear sequence. First, identifying priorities, where you rank your critical business functions. Second, risk identification, where you list the threats those functions face. Third, likelihood assessment, where you estimate how often each threat strikes. Fourth, impact analysis, where you measure the damage each threat would cause. And fifth, resource prioritization, where you sort everything into a single ordered list for action. Think of it like planning flood defenses for a town. You decide what must be protected, list what could flood it, gauge how often, estimate the damage, then rank where to build the walls first. How do you set priorities and the timing metrics that guide recovery? Start by listing your critical business functions, the activities that, if disrupted, would jeopardize your mission, and rank them by importance. Split the work across the team, then merge everyone's lists into one master ranking, taking care to gather input from areas the team does not directly represent. This is the qualitative side. On the quantitative side, you assign each asset a value in money, its asset value, which feeds later calculations. Then you set 2 timing measures. The maximum tolerable downtime is the longest a function can be down before the harm becomes irreparable. Critical functions carry a shorter maximum tolerable downtime than routine ones. The recovery time objective is how quickly you believe you can actually restore a function, and it must always sit below the maximum tolerable downtime, so nothing stays down longer than the business can survive. There is a data loss counterpart too. The recovery point objective is the amount of data you can afford to lose, measured backward from the moment of the incident. If you back up transaction logs every 15 minutes, your recovery point objective is 15 minutes, so you might lose up to a quarter hour of data. Think of it like a delivery promise. Maximum tolerable downtime is the absolute deadline. Recovery time objective is your realistic estimate, and recovery point objective is how much of the shipment you are willing to lose along the way. How do you identify the risks facing your functions? Recall that a risk exists when an asset has a vulnerability and a threat can exploit it. In this stage, you list every hazard, and the common ones come easily, while the obscure ones take creativity. Hazards fall into 2 families. Natural threats include violent storms, lightning, wildfires, earthquakes, landslides, volcanic activity, and pandemics. Human-caused threats include terrorism and unrest, workplace violence, theft and vandalism, fires and explosions, prolonged power loss, building collapse, transportation and internet disruptions, service provider outages, and economic crises. These lists are starting points, not complete inventories, so draw on every corner of the team. This stage is purely qualitative. You are naming what could go wrong, not yet judging how likely or how costly. Think of it like a doctor listing every condition a patient could develop before running a single test. How do you judge how likely each threat is? Some threats are far more plausible than others, and geography drives much of that. An earthquake is a real concern in Southern California, but far less so on the Gulf Coast, where a tropical storm flips the odds. To capture this, you assign each threat an annualized rate of occurrence, the number of times you expect it to happen in a typical year. Annualizing lets you compare wildly different risks on one scale. You base these figures on your own history, the team's professional experience, and outside experts like meteorologists and seismologists. You can also lean on free resources, since government agencies publish earthquake and flood hazard maps, and insurers hold deep actuarial data they may share. Think of it like a weather forecast. You cannot know exactly when the storm comes, but you can put a solid probability on it and plan accordingly. How do you measure the impact of each risk in dollars? This stage turns likelihood into consequence using 3 linked quantitative metrics. The exposure factor is the share of an asset's value that a risk would destroy, written as a percentage. If a fire would wreck 70% of a building, the exposure factor is 70%. The single loss expectancy is the money lost each time the risk hits, and you get it by multiplying asset value by exposure factor. A building worth $500,000 with a 70% exposure factor gives a single loss expectancy of $350,000. The annualized loss expectancy is the average yearly cost, found by multiplying the single loss expectancy by the annualized rate of occurrence. If that fire strikes about once every 30 years, roughly a 3% annual chance, the annualized loss expectancy is around $10,500 a year. That number is not a budgeting figure, since no fire happens yearly, but it is invaluable for ranking risks. Alongside the math, you must weigh non-monetary damage too, like lost goodwill, employees leaving after long downtime, community obligations, and bad publicity. These resist a price tag but matter just as much, because a wrecked customer base leaves you no business to return to. Think of it like appraising storm damage to a house. You total the repair bill, but you also weigh the neighborhood's reputation, which no invoice captures. How do you turn all of this into a priority list? This final stage merges the two worlds. On the quantitative side, it is simple. List every risk and sort it in descending order by annualized loss expectancy. Then work down from the top until you exhaust your resources, which happens long before you run out of risks. Then you fold in the qualitative concerns, an exercise that is more art than science. Sitting with senior management, you may raise or lower a risks rank based on judgment the numbers miss. A fire suppression company, for instance, might elevate fire above an earthquake that would cause more physical damage, because being destroyed by the very thing you sell against would shatter its reputation beyond recovery. Think of it like packing one lifeboat. The manifest gives you a starting order, but human judgment decides who truly boards first. So let's bring it together. A business impact analysis identifies your critical processes and the threats to them using both quantitative and qualitative views. It runs through 5 stages: identifying priorities, risk identification, likelihood assessment, impact analysis, and resource prioritization. Along the way, you set asset value and the timing metrics of maximum tolerable downtime, recovery time objective, and recovery point objective, then measure damage through exposure factor, single loss expectancy, annualized rate of occurrence, and annualized loss expectancy. Finally, you merge the numbers with human judgment into one ranked list. Master this, and every continuity decision that follows rests on solid ground. The MCQs covering all the topics and concepts from this session are available on rucloud.com. Practice the chapter-specific MCQs before moving on to the next session. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, post a comment below or email us. I will see you in the next session.